Hi, it's Peggy at Headshots by Peggy, and I am excited that I am back with John SWANBECK for our monthly camera tips for actors. So, we last month we had our big Q&A. The whole episode was Q&A, and we said we would start, opening up our segments with questions if I had some. So I have one. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
This happens to be from one of your students.
Oh my gosh.
Should I tell you his name?
I don't know if would he want you to tell us.
I told him. He told me I could. He told me I could.
You can tell me.
It's from Gene Nesser.
Oh, of course, Gene. Yes, we should absolutely say his name loud and proud.
I want to tell you how I know Gene. I don't know if you know this. I took his headshots when he was 15 years old.
Wow.
And I've been taking his headshots ever since. And this 15-year-old kid comes into my studio and he's talking about this project that he's doing and this project that he wrote and this thing. And I'm like, in one ear and out the other. I'm like, oh, that's really cute. And then we get all done and he's like, so I have my laptop with me. Do you want to see the last project that I just wrote and directed? And I was like, sure. And I was blown away. I was like, what, Mary, come here, look at this. Yeah, he is a force not to be reckoned with. This kid's, he's got some. All right, so let me read you his question. I just wanted to share that with you.
He's terrific and very talented actor.
Yes, and very much a talented actor. Okay, so, I thought I had it pulled up right here. Okay.
Pull it up.
I thought it was right here, and this is talking about something. Okay, so how do you stand out when the scene is no words? In other words, it's a self-tape and it's you reacting to the reader. Like, what can you do in your reactions to stand out?
Well, I think that's a two-part answer. The question, the answer is the same as the answer to most questions about standing out, which is character, character, character. If you're thinking just like an actor who's going to do a really good job of acting material, you're going to be more general on camera. Actors have to create character the way the camera thinks about character. And that way, whenever the camera is pointed at you, you'll stand out. So if you're just thinking about being a good actor and doing a good job of acting the scene, you're not going to stand out. Sure, if there's a scene where the person's crying or they're really angry, sure, you can stand out that way. But for the most part, creating character as the character is without any material is the way to stand out on camera. That's actually the best way to test whether or not you've created a character for the camera and one that's going to stand out on camera. If after you've done your character work, if you can take away the material and the character still is vivid on camera and still pops on screen, then you know you have a character and you know you'll stand out. I mean, if you think about all of the times right now, if everybody listening were to think about their favorite film or TV show and their favorite characters, they wouldn't be thinking about dialogue. They would be thinking about the characters without any dialogue. And that's how actors have to think about creating character. It has to be able to exist without any dialogue. So if you've got a character who can exist without any dialogue, you're going to stand out if there is no dialogue. The other thing you want to do is you want to slow down your reactions. If you've got no dialogue, certainly if you have no character, and you're reacting to the other person, and they're very quick reactions that you're doing, you're going to look naturalistic, which doesn't work on camera because it looks messy. So I would just slow down your reactions. Think about, I always say that if you want to be cinematic on camera, move slowly or move in slow motion. I don't mean literally slow motion, but move in slow motion while talking at a normal speed, because one of the definitions of cinematic is the suspension of time. So if you can slow down your movements and slow down your reactions, you're going to look more like you belong in a movie or a TV show or on camera. So if you have no dialogue and you're just supposed to react, think in slow motion and you'll look like you belong in a movie.
So kind of like react, would you say longer, like slower? What I'm just trying to make sure I understand. Not the words said and you think about it and then react, but it's more like when you react, it's more drawn out. Is that a good way?
It's more drawn out. Think about it as though you're existing for a moment in a silent film. So for instance, if my reaction is this, let's say there's something going on, I could react one of two ways. I could react like this, or I could react, and the second one looks more like a movie, so the actor's going to look like they belong on camera. That's whether or not they've created a character. But naturalistic, they do a lot of fast naturalistic movements. It's jittery on camera. So,
it looks really jittery, and it almost, you know, because you're looking at frame rates and all these different things. So that's great. I like that.
right. So that way they'll look like they belong on camera. They'll look more like a natural.
Cool. All right. So what do you want to talk about today? What are we going to talk about today?
Well, first of all, I think we both agree. Anytime somebody wants to send in a question, we would love to have them.
Absolutely.
It's just really great to have that sort of dialogue with your audience. I thought I would share some of the camera insights that I published online in the past week or so and talk about those a little bit. And if you think something is unclear or needs further explanation like you just did, that's great. Come back at me. How's that sound? Does that sound all right?
That sounds great. You know, I love your quotes and your little deep insights in few words.
Yes, and I get a lot of people who like them, find them helpful and valuable with auditions or projects, and they tell me all the time. I definitely have my detractors. And so if anyone listening is a detractor, please write in, let us know, because then we can have a healthy creative debate about it. They're all based on how I see, they're all based on cinematic thinking, as I call it, and how I see that actors can use the actor's process to create on camera and create movie-like takes on camera. And to some degree, they exist to provoke conversation because they can be fairly unorthodox in nature.
And that's you and I mean, I've sent you messages several times with like big question marks, like, what did you just say, John? Or I've asked Merrick, you know, first before I send you the question marks. I'm like, what is this? And I think that's the great part of this particular segment that we do once a month is I think that you need to look at things in multiple angles, at different angles. And that could be said for so many things right now in the world. Quit looking at the world just as you perceive it. How do you perceive it? What's your experiences and how, because the more, like, if I understand what you're seeing as a director and they're understanding what I see as a DP, and so excuse me, so-and-so's understanding this, then all of a sudden we're like, oh, I see why he said that. If I did that, it was going to make this look better, you know, and then it starts making sense. And
Right.
that's why it's okay if we say something on this vlog and you're like, I'm calling it out, call it out, because that will, you know, we can learn and maybe you can see where we're coming from and vice versa.
Call it out nicely.
Yeah, called out nicely. It's been a tough year.
Tough year. Well, and the way I think from the camera's perspective, and I think that's what either intrigues people or confuses them, is I don't think from the actor's process, although I understand the actor's process, I've studied all of the processes, and I understand about the script. I understand all of that. But my specialty is thinking the way the camera thinks and bringing the camera's perspective to the actor's process. So I think it is a unique point of view in that respect. So this first one that I published, let's see, I'll just go backwards and give you a few and explain them a little bit. The first one is, don't play characters as you see them, play characters as they see themselves. And the most, sort of the clearest example of that is if someone's playing a creep, well, the creep doesn't see himself as the creep. Creep sees himself as charming. Or if someone's playing a prude, the prude doesn't see herself as a prude. The prude sees herself as understanding how to do things and trying to instruct the world how to do things the proper way. So characters tend to see them, we as human beings tend to see ourselves the way we see ourselves, and the world sees us always differently. And that clash actually creates comedy and drama. But if you're just creating the character the way you see the character, the way the world sees the character, and to some degree you have to do that, obviously. But if that's the only thing you're doing, then you are judging your character. And the world will judge your character too, instead of identifying with your character. But in life, we all see ourselves in a very certain way, and we go out into the world and we try to reinforce the way we see ourselves in our daily lives. And then the world comes along and says, has a different opinion, and then there's a clash. And in order to create a more multi-dimensional character, you need to create the character as the character is on paper, but you need to also factor in the other side of the equation, which is how the character views themselves. And then you'll have a more real human being, because that's the way human beings think. So, just remember, create the character the way they see themselves and not just the way the world sees them.
I think that's brilliant because exactly what you said, the creep doesn't see themselves as a creep. And sometimes when you're given the scene and you're the creep, you kind of, put that creepy but how much more creepy is it when you're more arrogant and like, I'm so awesome, because that's how the creep would see himself. I like that. That's cool. That's cool.
Well, and the other thing is everyone's always trying to avoid playing types. They want to play something original and unique. And we all know, to a large degree, writers and directors think in terms of types. And everyone has to reconcile themselves to this idea of types. But if you get cast as, or you want to audition for something that is seen as a traditional type, if you just play the character as the world sees the character, you will be a type. But if you play that type the way the type sees her or himself, then you'll have more dimension. It'll be more original, more unique. It won't be, that won't be simply a type or a brand. It'll have more human dimension to it.
So that's really good.
It's a way around the whole type issue too.
I like that. All right.
This next one is, the fastest way to raise the stakes is by imagining the worst that can happen. And the way I work is, like I said, I understand all the different processes, but given the nature of the business, we have to learn to work quickly. And there are certain terms that I hear thrown around that people don't really know how to achieve it. Like, for instance, you hear people saying, raise the stakes, high stakes. And I think to myself, how are you going to do that? And usually the answer is, well, I'm going to connect to the material more. And that still is too general and vague. I like to have very concrete steps. This is sort of my director thinking factoring into all of this. I like to have very concrete steps for, here's how you can achieve this idea. fairly quickly, and yet to a degree that it is really interesting and powerful on camera. So from a director's standpoint, if I need the actor to raise the stakes on camera quickly for a take or an audition, we all know how fast auditions are. If you can imagine the worst that can happen, that's going to naturally heighten the stakes. And that's something that's not on the page anywhere. It's not in the scene to imagine the worst that can happen, but we do it in life all the time. If we're having an argument in life, we tend to imagine the worst outcome of the argument while we're having the argument. Or if we get bad news, we tend to imagine the worst that can happen. I think human beings, characters on camera, are either imagining the worst that can happen or their dream coming true, given the nature of the conflict. So if actors want to raise the stakes quickly in a take, if their character just imagines the worst outcome of the situation at hand, it's going to heighten the stakes for them and the audience. So there's that one.
Okay, I like it. I like it.
This one got a lot of people who liked it and a lot of people who disagreed with it.
Ooh, we're getting into controversy. All right, let's go.
The fastest way to look like a pro is by taking out the pauses. Now, here's what I mean by that. I understand there's pauses everywhere in film and TV. A lot of what's interesting on film and TV is pauses. I completely get that. But especially if you're in an audition situation and you want everyone to think that you're a pro, the pauses that actors have to get rid of is the little pause they take before they say their line in order to make the moment real. They're obsessed with that. They love to take a little moment either to show us they're listening or to make the moment real before they play it. That's very different than a character taking a pause because the stakes are high or they're thinking about what they're going to say. So there's a big difference between a character taking a pause and an actor taking a pause. And it's the actor pauses that make them look like they're not a pro. Those have to go by the wayside. It's like announcing your process every time you open your mouth, and that's just not, that doesn't look professional. So you end up with scenes that are read like this: line, 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 because everyone's taking a pause before their line in order to make that moment real before they say it. And I think that's just taking care of their process where they should let their process take care of them. So it's those pauses, and that's not, a lot of actors are guilty of that because they're trying to take care of their process.
And in real life, you just like what I just did in real life, before you're finished with your sentence, I know what I'm already going to say. And so, and that's how real conversation is. Real people don't really care what your last word to your sentence is. The real people care about what I'm going to say next. And when you have that, so John, how was breakfast this morning? Well, Peggy, that's not, yeah.
We never get through the day. You're right. Human beings don't pause that much. Sure, we pause sometimes, but we don't pause that much. And you're right. We're usually waiting for the other person to stop talking so we can talk. And then that's conversational flow. You're talking, I'm talking. We're listening because we can listen for when the other person's going to stop so we can interject. But that's more real and more believable. So you'll look more professional. The pros absolutely do not do that. They absolutely do not take that little pause before lines to make the moment real or to feel the moment before they say it. They absolutely do not do that.
That's a great point. I believe that. I can see that. But there's the time for the dramatic pause, but not the whole, yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Right. So that was definitely one where I got a lot of both, oh, that's really good, and other people are like, that's terrible, what are you saying? This next one is, on camera, say one thing, think another. It is one of the um, it's one of there's like three things in my estimation that make something a movie take, and that is absolutely one of them. Because actors are so conditioned to get the script right, to play the right choice, to play the script as it's written, to honor the script, to do a good job of playing the script, to make the scene happen. They never add the other dimension to it. So, you know, we have a really good script and the actor comes along and plays it exactly the way it's written, but does a good job. Well, that's the definition of one-dimensional. But if I'm playing, if the script's written this way and I'm saying one thing, but I'm thinking something else underneath or above the scene, then it's going to have emotional complexity and it's going to have a three-dimensional quality. And that's that cinematic effect we see in actors' eyes on camera. And it's the thing that actors can use from their process. They can think about subtext, they can think about backstory, but the idea is to bring it into the scene and don't just use it as something you're tapping into internally, but it's almost as though you play the subtext. So for instance, if I'm saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, and inside I'm thinking, I really, really hate you, which is very human, or I'm thinking, I really hate you, but inside I have a crush on you. Those two things are happening simultaneously. And the idea is you need to let the camera see the thing you're thinking as much as you want to have it hear the thing you're saying. And those two things should not be the same. So it's just really that actors are so good at playing the script the way it's written, but that ends up being one-dimensional on camera. On stage, it's perfect. On stage, that's perfect. Because on stage, we can't even see anyone's eyes for the most part. But on camera, if you're thinking one thing for the entire scene, that is the thing you're not talking about, you will look like you belong in a movie. It's that simple. So it's one of the three things I think about. I think it's three. When I think about, here are the things that if you absolutely did them, you would look like you belong in a movie. And not wait for the director to come along and say, you're doing a really good job of playing the scene. Now, if you add this other level, we're going to have something. Actors have to learn to think this way on their own. Actors have to learn how to think cinematically on their own and not wait for the director to do it, because the director's job is to find somebody who can do it already. So that's one of the things that will absolutely make something look like a movie take is, what are you not talking about?
And I want to throw something else in that people should be thinking about, particularly now. Like you said, they shouldn't be waiting for the director to, they should already be doing that. Now, nowadays, they're just starting to open up production. And productions, they're going to need to get through things quicker because it's mask on, mask off, mask on, mask off. If you are that person that has to do 15 takes because you just can't do it, well, they're not going to want to continue to work with you because the pace of everything has changed. Things just on a health, keeping everybody, if you have 50 people, on a set, you're trying to keep people as healthy and safe as possible. So the more you know how to do your job, the easier you make it on everybody else's job. So really think about other people at more so than ever right now, and how important it is for you to know this as an actor, you should be able to tell a story on camera. You should already know this. This is part of your job. So I think that's always been important, but I think it's extremely important right now.
I think that's a very good point. Very, very good point. You're right. It's always been the case, but it's even more so the case now. I think you're right. I think one of the traps for actors is they love the experience of working with a director and exploring the character and exploring material and digging away at it. And that's just something that they love about it. But what you're saying and what I'm saying and what is absolutely true is that's not really a part of the process. If they have rehearsals with the director, they might get that, or if they get to meet with the director outside. But when you're on set shooting, it's not about digging into material and exploring material and making things work. And it's not what it's about. It's about grabbing takes and capturing something on camera. So I know they love that experience with the director, but if they think that they're going to audition and that's what they're going to end up with, they're not. It's like you're saying, the director's looking for someone who can do it already. Everyone is. I think that's
Yeah.
a really good point, Peggy, about the what's going on now. That's really true. Especially because all of the precautions the productions have to take now are costing them more money. So they're certainly not going to indulge, you know, uh, more takes or more filming than they absolutely need. Everything's changed financially. I think you're right.
Yeah, I think this is something that people need to be thinking and be aware of.
Right. That's really important. That's a good point. Um, this next one is uh, don't make points, make conversation. Actors love to make points as though they're instructing the other character or they're instructing the audience. And it ends up sounding like a character's lecturing us instead of just having a conversation the way we were talking about. We were just talking about having a conversation. And when we have conversations, we're not thinking about teaching the other person, unless we're teaching the other person, or um, we're not thinking about instructing or teaching or even making points. We're just having a conversation. And when actors, because they're trying to communicate a message to the audience, when they try to do that, they come across as though they're, again, not real. They come across as somebody who's laying their hands on an agenda, and they're going to force an agenda down our throats instead of what conversation does. When they're having conversation pulls the audience into the experience and makes them feel as though they're in the room with the characters. And then by observing the situation as though they're in the room with the characters, they have the emotional experience they're supposed to. Making points pushes people away. But a lot of actors like to do a lot of emphasis, and they're trying to convince the other character all the time, and they're trying to, like I said, make points, and it doesn't come across as a real, believable human being. And here's something they really have to be wary of, and they should really look at this sometime. Many scenes are written as two people trying to convince each other of something. I'm trying to convince you of my point of view, you're trying to convince me of your point of view. And that's the way it's written on paper. But if they really watch film and television with an objective eye, as opposed to as an audience member, they're going to hear that although dialogue's written as convincing, characters are not trying to convince each other all the time. Mostly they're making statements, and the dialogue is convincing, but the actors aren't convincing. And it's one of the things that makes actors seem like they are on stage versus on camera. So actors want to drive the scene, they want to make points, they want to convince the other person, they want to affect the other person and be affected by the other person. That's what they're sort of taught in acting class, and that comes across as overacting on camera. It's one of the biggest disconnects between the actor's process and what makes something work on camera is, for the most part, on camera is creating profound, life-changing experiences and emotions and delivering it as though it's an everyday conversation. Delivering it as though you're just hanging out. And that's one of the things, that's one of the biggest disconnects. And in the classes I do, that's one of the things that really is the most challenging thing, is getting actors to understand that they're creating profoundly, but they're delivering really as though the characters are just having an everyday conversation about the weather. The delivery of the lines comes out as though they're just hanging out, even if the emotion is profound. That's one of the biggest disconnects. It's the hardest thing to get actors to understand.
I like that. That's really good. Some good stuff, John. It's like you should do this all the time. Oh, wait, you do every single day.
I do it every day, and we do it every month.
Yes. So, are you still posting these on Instagram every single day and
Yes,
Twitter?
pretty much daily.
Yeah. So where are you at with, I know at one time you were saying that you were going to put together like a book or a calendar with your daily have you thought any more about that? Is anything like that in the works?
It is in the works, absolutely. This year has thrown things a little bit, but I'm back on track. And yes, it's definitely in the works.
Good. Good. So, how's the classes? How are you finding it to teach through Zoom? Like, I know you've been doing this for several months now. Like, how is that? Are you finding that are you still liking it? Are you finding that it's good because they have to look on camera, or are you like, okay, this was a fun experience. Let's get back in person. Like, how are you feeling?
No, I think I understand a lot of people and myself to some degree like the in-person class, the one-on-one. I think actors like it. They like the personal connection. But I also find that the actors in my online classes really love the online classes. Um, and they really, really love it. And to some degree, I think it has something to do with the fact that online, I always start with an opening mini lecture, like a mini talk. And I never really did that in person, but they really like that portion, they like that portion of it. But they also like the fact that they have to now be more camera savvy and lighting savvy and sound savvy. I think for some of them, it's like, oh, I got to do this too. But for a lot of people, they're happy to be able to be, to understand more those elements because they know it'll make them look better in a self-tape submission or when they do their own work. The other thing I really like about it is working with actors from all over the country and all over the world. And I love the fact that I have an actor from South Africa and Spain and Paris and England and Canada and all over the country, all over the states too. And it doesn't matter where they're from, actors are all similar in that they have the same passions and the same desires and dreams and goals. I love that. And their work ethic is very much the same. It's almost as though they're all from the same neighborhood. So I like that part about it. The other thing I like about it is that intrigues me is Zoom is becoming its own art form. I don't know if any of your viewers saw the Emmy Awards over the weekend. And now they can't do the Emmy Awards, all of these performance shows, award shows, they can't do it with an audience anymore. So they've had to get very creative with how they do the show now. And because they've been forced to be creative, it's opened up all of these avenues that no one was even thinking about before. I'm not sure we're ever going to go back to the way things were done in many respects. At first when Zoom came out, it was sort of a hindrance, but now because it's been around for 6 months, people are starting to think more creatively about it. Casting directors really like it. I think you're going to start hearing the term Zoom Reels, because if an actor has a really cool backdrop and good lighting and good sound, it's almost like a mini stage. And they can do little mini character stories on this mini stage. It's one of the things I'm starting to develop in my classes. And casting directors love it. And I have people in my classes who are developing stories and projects that are coming out of Zoom. I know a lot of people are doing that. So I'm very intrigued by the fact that this restriction that was placed on us 6 months ago has now turned into creative opportunities. And anytime that happens, I'm very, very intrigued, very fascinated. So
I know that one of my headshot clients had asked it was a minor, and the parent called me and said, hey, we're trying to put a reel together. We've just got some self tapes and what do you think of that? And I said, if you would have asked me this 7 months ago, I would have said, no one's going to look at that. That's not how it's done in the industry. I said, but you have a unique situation right now, because casting directors absolutely will look at that now because they understand. And so I helped them put a little reel together, and it actually looked pretty cool. So it's, this thing that, so many of us feel so I don't even know the word, but you know, the heaviness of all of the boundaries has really opened up things and given so many people opportunities to do things and to be seen and to, you know, create in ways, you know, like, hey, this guy in South Africa or person in South Africa, maybe they've been following your work for years and always wish, man, I wish I was in LA. I'd love to take a class with him.
That's true. That's what's happening.
Boom, you know, and you know, so these it's just really amazing how we as humans have decided to take this lemon and make lemonade out of it, you know, really.
Right.
And I know it's been an emotional roller coaster, and you know, there's so many deaths and so many terrible things have come of it, and I don't ever want to belittle any of those things when I'm talking about the awesomeness that we have, you know, brought out of it. But you know, it's incredible to think about the opportunities. And I think when you look at, you know, the fact that this is an opportunity, it can open the doors for you. You know, I think that's really good.
Yeah.
Hey, it's cool.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I miss people though. I'm not going to lie. I miss it.
We all miss people. Absolutely. Yeah.
But this is awesome. What else do you want to say before we close it up, John?
What else do I want to say before we close it up? No, I would just echo what we just said. I think if you don't have a nice backdrop, get a nice backdrop. If you don't have good lighting, get good lighting. If you don't have good sound, get good sound, because that's where you're existing these days. And so just get on board. It doesn't take a lot of money. It just takes a little thought, just a little bit of time, and don't just and really do it. I mean, don't just put up any backdrop and have any lighting and any sound. I mean, really think about it like a designer, like a producer, like you really want something to look good, because it's where you're going to be existing. It's where you're existing now, and it's where you're going to be existing for the foreseeable future. I don't think when all of this is over, hopefully that'll be soon, I don't think when all this is over, we're going to go back entirely to the way things were. I think things like Zoom are here to stay. So do yourself a favor and take care of your Zoom experience.
Yeah, get your lighting figured out, get your sound figured out. Sound is important, lighting is important, no distractions, nobody doing laundry or, you know, cats running through the back or anything like that. That's all really important. You can set your stage.
Otherwise you'll look like an amateur.
Exactly. And there's just too many people out there that are putting the effort into it for you not to put effort into it.
That's right.
So, awesome. John, it was so good to hang out with you.
Always good to hang out with you and your viewers.
Please leave us questions, comments, share this all over the place, and most importantly, have an amazing week. I'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.